Welcome to my channel, where we delve into some of the most shocking and gripping true crime stories. Today we explore the tragic and twisted tale of Jacob Rasmussen, a young man whose life was cut short in the opulent city of Naples, Florida, in August 2016. Jacob Rasmussen was a 20-year-old massage therapist living in Naples, Florida. Originally from a small town in Minnesota, Jacob had moved to Naples in search of better opportunities and a warmer climate. He quickly became known for his good looks, athletic build, and charming personality, traits that made him popular among his clients, especially older women. Jacob had a unique ability to make people feel special, which helped him build a loyal client base. But his charm and good looks also led him into the world of sugar babies, where younger individuals enter into relationships with older, wealthier people in exchange for gifts and financial support. Jacob had several sugar mommies, but his primary benefactor was Veronica Hayes, a 59-year-old astrologist. While Jacob enjoyed the financial benefits of these relationships, they inevitably brought complications and tensions. In the days leading up to his death, Jacob was filled with excitement about his future. He had recently received a generous gift from one of his clients, a brand new Audi SUV, which he proudly showed off to his friends. He was also planning a trip to Disney World with some of his close friends, a trip he had been eagerly looking forward to for months. His Instagram was filled with posts about his upcoming plans, including pictures of his new car and countdowns to his Disney trip. Despite the complexities of his life, Jacob remained optimistic and full of life, known for his infectious smile and positive attitude. Friends and clients alike admired his ambition and drive. However, Jacob's life, filled with dreams and plans, was tragically cut short in a shocking way. On the morning of August 12, 2016, Jacob's neighbor, Linda Martino, began her day like any other. Linda, a 95-year-old retired school teacher from Brooklyn, lived next door to Jacob in their Naples, Florida apartment complex. She often chatted with Jacob and had become concerned when she noticed that his shiny new Audi SUV hadn't moved in 2 weeks. Linda found this odd because Jacob usually had a busy schedule. Around 9 a.m., Linda decided to check on Jacob. She knocked on his door but got no answer. Worried, she used the spare key Jacob had given her for emergencies. As soon as she opened the door, she knew something was wrong. The apartment was eerily quiet, and a faint, unpleasant smell filled the air. Linda called out Jacob's name, but there was no response. She walked through the living room and into the hallway, and when she reached the bathroom, she was met with a horrifying sight. Jacob was lying face down in the toilet, naked, with his head submerged in the water and his body limp. Linda screamed and backed away, her heart racing. Shaking, Linda ran back to her apartment and called 911. Her voice trembling as she explained what she had found. "I think my neighbor is dead," she told the operator. "He's in his bathroom, and it looks like something happened to him." The 911 operator stayed on the line with Linda, trying to keep her calm until the police arrived. Linda was in shock, pacing back and forth in her apartment and glancing nervously at Jacob's door. She couldn't believe what she had just seen. Just a few days ago, Jacob had been full of life, talking about his plans to visit Disney World and showing off his new car. Within minutes, the Naples Police Department arrived at the scene. Officers secured the area and began their investigation. Linda was asked to wait outside while the police did their work. She sat on a bench, shaking and holding her head in her hands, trying to process the tragic event. News of Jacob's death quickly spread through the apartment complex. Neighbors gathered outside, whispering and speculating about what had happened. The local news soon picked up the story, and reporters arrived to cover the shocking discovery. Cameras captured the scene, showing the police presence and the concerned faces of the residents. Jacob's sudden and violent death left everyone in shock, especially those who knew him well. He was young, full of potential, and had a bright future ahead of him. Now, his life was tragically cut short, and his friends and family were left to mourn the loss. The Naples Police Department acted quickly after Linda Martino's 911 call on August 12, 2016. Detective Samuel Jenkins led the investigation. Known for his attention to detail and his success in solving high-profile cases, his partner, Officer Karen Blake, was known for her sharp intuition and calm demeanor. As they entered Jacob Rasmussen's apartment, the officers immediately noticed the eerie silence. The living room was tidy, with no signs of a struggle. A flat-screen TV was mounted on the wall, and a few magazines, including the latest issue of GQ, were on the coffee table. The apartment looked normal, but the unsettling smell hinted at something more sinister. Detective Jenkins and Officer Blake cautiously moved toward the bathroom where Jacob's body was found. The bathroom was small, with white tiles and a modern shower. Jacob's naked body was slumped over the toilet, his head submerged in the water. There were no visible signs of a break-in, and nothing seemed out of place, but the scene was disturbing. Detective Jenkins noted the position of the body and the bruising pattern, suggesting that Jacob had fought back against his attacker. The bathroom itself was clean, with no blood or other obvious evidence. The police began their methodical investigation, taking photographs of the entire apartment, collecting fingerprints, and searching for any possible clues. They found a set of kitchen knives, but none appeared to be missing. Officer Blake found Jacob's phone on the kitchen counter. It was a new iPhone 6s, and it might hold valuable information. She carefully bagged it for further analysis. Detective Jenkins and his team interviewed neighbors, including Linda Martino, to gather more information about Jacob's recent activities and any potential visitors. Linda mentioned seeing a few of Jacob's clients come and go, but nothing seemed unusual. She also noted the new Audi SUV Jacob had received recently. They also checked for hair fibers and other small pieces of evidence that might have been left behind by the attacker. As the investigation progressed, the police began to piece together a timeline of Jacob's last hours. They hoped his phone and the security cameras in the apartment complex might provide additional clues. But the clean state of the apartment and the lack of obvious evidence suggested that the killer had taken great care to cover their tracks. The tragic scene at Jacob's apartment marked the beginning of a complex investigation. Detective Jenkins and Officer Blake knew they had a difficult case ahead of them, but they were determined to find out who was responsible for the young man's untimely death and bring them to justice. The first suspect in the investigation was Veronica Hayes, a 59-year-old astrologist. Veronica was well known in Naples for her larger-than-life personality and her impressive client list, which included several celebrities. She lived in a lavish mansion decorated with exotic crystals and zodiac signs. Veronica had a reputation for being generous, often gifting expensive items to her friends and clients. However, she was also known to be possessive and obsessive, especially in her personal relationships. It was no secret that Veronica had been in a sexual relationship with Jacob Rasmussen, acting as his sugar mommy. She showered him with gifts, including the 70-inch flat-screen TV found in his apartment. When the police first questioned Veronica, she was calm but visibly upset. She admitted to being deeply hurt when she discovered that Jacob had been seeing other women. Despite her feelings, she denied any involvement in his death. Detective Samuel Jenkins and Officer Karen Blake conducted the interrogation. They were careful and thorough, asking Veronica about her whereabouts on the night of the murder. Veronica claimed that, like a typical Virgo, she was at home alone, reading the latest issue of Astrology Today and meditating. She insisted she had not seen Jacob for several days before his death and respected his need for privacy as a Scorpio. The police dug deeper into Veronica's background. They found that she had a history of intense relationships, including 3 failed marriages that often ended badly, something she readily admitted to, saying she couldn't help it as someone with their moon in Cancer. Former friends and clients described her as charming but controlling. Several mentioned that Veronica's Cancer moon could make her very jealous, especially when she felt betrayed. This gave the police a possible motive for her to harm Jacob. During the interrogation, Veronica's demeanor shifted. She became more defensive and agitated, particularly when asked about her relationship with Jacob. She accused the police of unfairly targeting her because of her wealth, high-profile lifestyle, and belief in astrology. Despite her protests, the police continued to press her for details. The police also examined Veronica's phone records. They found multiple calls and text messages to Jacob in the days leading up to his death. Some of the messages were affectionate, while others were increasingly aggressive, desperate, and accusatory. This evidence painted a picture of a relationship that was unraveling, with Veronica struggling to maintain control. Despite the mounting evidence and Veronica's increasingly erratic behavior, there was no direct proof linking her to the crime scene. The police needed more concrete evidence to make an arrest. As the investigation continued, Veronica remained a key suspect, her actions and history keeping her under close scrutiny. The second suspect the police investigated was Bryony Mitchelkey, a 68-year-old Australian millionaire, with a shocking backstory. Bryony had recently moved to Naples after facing legal trouble in Australia, where a newspaper had published allegations that she had trafficked asylum seekers to work in her restaurant chain for subhuman wages. Known for her outgoing and vivacious personality, Bryony was also fiercely protective of her friends and had a temper that could flare up unexpectedly. Bryony had started a sexual relationship with Jacob Rasmussen shortly before his death, acting as another of his sugar mommies. She was generous, giving him expensive gifts, including the Audi SUV he received just before he died. When the police questioned Bryony, she was cooperative but guarded. She acknowledged her relationship with Jacob and expressed shock at his death. Detective Jenkins and Officer Blake led the interrogation, asking Bryony about her activities on the night Jacob was killed. Bryony stated she had been at a naked masquerade ball at the Naples Grand Beach Resort, mingling with other wealthy attendees and enjoying the evening. She provided the names of several people who could confirm her alibi, including local business owners and socialites. During the interrogation, Bryony remained composed, but her demeanor shifted when asked about Jacob's other relationships. She seemed irritated and defensive, insisting she had no idea about his involvement with other women. Police found her reaction suspicious, as it hinted at possible jealousy and a motive for harming Jacob. Detective Jenkins and Officer Blake searched Bryony's home for any evidence linking her to the crime. They found several expensive gifts she had planned to give Jacob, including a jet ski, an air hockey table, and a PlayStation 4, indicating her deep investment in their relationship. They also saw several large withdrawals from her bank account in the weeks leading up to Jacob's death. While this alone was not incriminating, it suggested she was heavily involved in Jacob's life and willing to spend significant amounts of money on him. The police also discovered a series of text messages between Bryony and Jacob. Despite Bryony's cooperation and strong alibi, the police remained suspicious of her involvement. Her intense feelings for Jacob and possible jealousy provided a motive, but like with Veronica Hayes, there was no direct evidence linking her to the murder. As the investigation continued, Bryony's actions and connections to Jacob kept her under close watch by the authorities. The third suspect in the investigation was Marcus Dean, a 21-year-old who had been in a rivalry with Jacob Rasmussen. Marcus was known in Naples for being competitive and ambitious. He was also a sugar baby, catering to wealthy married couples bored with their routine sex lives. Marcus was driven to be the best in his circle, always striving to outdo his peers in sexual performance and the number of sugar parents. His personality was described as hot-headed, and he had a history of getting into arguments and fights, often fueled by alcohol. The police questioned Marcus shortly after Jacob's body was found. Detective Jenkins and Officer Blake led the interrogation, focusing on the nature of Marcus and Jacob's relationship. Marcus admitted that he and Jacob had been rivals, both vying for the attention and gifts of the same wealthy women. He described their relationship as tense, but insisted it was all part of the competition. On the night of Jacob's death, Marcus claimed he was at a local bar, Patty Murphy's, with friends celebrating a recent conquest with some wealthy couples. He provided the names of his friends who could confirm his alibi. However, Marcus's reputation for getting into fights after drinking raised suspicions about his possible involvement in Jacob's death. The police dug into Marcus's background, finding numerous reports of altercations with other sugar babies and clients. And he described Marcus as aggressive and quick to anger, especially when he felt threatened or disrespected. This temperament, combined with his rivalry with Jacob, gave the police a potential motive for murder. During the interrogation, Marcus initially remained calm but became defensive when asked about his whereabouts and relationship with Jacob. He denied any involvement in Jacob's death and accused the police of trying to pin the crime on him due to their rivalry. Yet his agitation grew as the questioning continued, suggesting he was hiding something. Detective Jenkins and Officer Blake searched Marcus's apartment for evidence. They found a few items linking him to Jacob, including a gold chain that Jacob had posted about on social media, saying it was a gift from a client. The police also discovered a series of text messages between Marcus and Jacob. The police also reviewed security footage from Patty Murphy's on the night of Jacob's death. The footage confirmed Marcus's presence at the bar, but there was a 2-hour gap where Marcus was unaccounted for. This window of time raised further suspicion, as it was enough time for him to commit the crime and return to the bar. Despite the mounting evidence and Marcus's suspicious behavior, there was still no direct proof linking him to Jacob's murder. The police continued to keep Marcus under close watch, hoping to uncover more information that could either confirm or clear their suspicions. On August 18, 2016, 6 days after Jacob Rasmussen's body was found, the Naples Police Department received a breakthrough. The day was hot and sunny, with temperatures soaring into the mid-90s. Detective Jenkins and Officer Blake were at the police station when they received a call from a local pawn shop owner who had found something unusual while inventorying recently pawned items. He told the police that a gold bracelet inscribed with the initials JAR had been pawned 2 days before Jacob's death. At the pawn shop, records showed that the bracelet had been pawned by Marcus Dean. This new evidence placed Marcus at the center of the investigation once again. Detective Jenkins and Officer Blake were determined to dig deeper. The police brought Marcus back in for questioning, this time confronting him with the evidence of the bracelet. Marcus's demeanor shifted from defensive to visibly nervous. He stumbled over his words as he tried to explain why he had the bracelet. Marcus claimed that Jacob had given it to him as a gift, but the police were skeptical given their contentious history. Detective Jenkins and Officer Blake also reviewed security footage from the pawn shop. The footage clearly showed Marcus entering the shop and pawning the bracelet. The timestamp on the video matched the date on the transaction records, leaving little doubt about Marcus's actions. The police used this footage to challenge Marcus's story further. The police also re-examined the security footage from Patty Murphy's bar on the night of Jacob's death. They discovered that Marcus had left the bar for 2 hours, providing him with enough time to commit the crime. This new evidence painted a clearer picture of Marcus's possible involvement in Jacob's murder. With the bracelet, the threatening text messages, and the suspicious gap in Marcus's alibi, the police felt they had enough to proceed. Detective Jenkins and Officer Blake presented their findings to the district attorney, who agreed that the evidence was compelling. The police were now focused on gathering more information to strengthen their case against Marcus. They continued to interview witnesses and piece together the events leading up to Jacob's death, determined to bring justice for the young man whose life was tragically cut short. But the investigation took an unexpected turn on August 22, 2016. On that day, the Naples Police Department made a breakthrough in Jacob Rasmussen's murder case that led them to a shocking conclusion. Detective Jenkins and Officer Blake had gathered enough evidence to identify the murderer, Veronica Hayes. Veronica, the 59-year-old astrologist, was known for her extravagant lifestyle and powerful personality. But despite her public charm, she had a dark, obsessive side, especially in her relationships. The investigation revealed that Veronica's obsession with Jacob had grown dangerously intense. She was furious when she discovered that Jacob was seeing other older women for sex and receiving expensive gifts from them, including the Audi SUV from Bryony Mitchell Key. Veronica's jealousy and anger boiled over on the night of August 11, 2016. On that night, Veronica confronted Jacob at his apartment about his new car. An argument erupted, and in a fit of rage, Veronica drowned Jacob in his own toilet. She forced his head into the water until he stopped struggling, leaving bruises on his arms and neck. To humiliate him further and make it look like he had drowned himself, she stripped off his clothes, making the scene appear even more degrading. Detective Jenkins and Officer Blake pieced together the events through witness statements, security footage, and forensic evidence. Veronica's alibi, which claimed she was home reading astrology today and meditating, fell apart when phone records showed she was near Jacob's apartment at the time of the murder. Furthermore, forensic analysis of Veronica's clothing revealed traces of Jacob's blood, linking her directly to the crime scene. On the morning of August 22nd, the police moved in to arrest Veronica. They arrived at her mansion, a grand estate adorned with astrological symbols and crystals. Veronica was taken by surprise, her confident demeanor cracking as she was handcuffed and led to the police car. She protested loudly, accusing the police of targeting her because of her wealth and status. The arrest sent shockwaves through the Naples community. Jacob's family, who had been devastated by his death, felt a mix of relief and sorrow. They were grateful that the murderer had been caught, but heartbroken over the senseless loss of their son. Veronica's friends and clients were equally shocked, struggling to reconcile the generous woman they knew with the brutal crime she had committed. Veronica Hayes was charged with second-degree murder. Her trial would reveal more about the dark side of her personality and the tragic obsession that led her to take Jacob's life. The arrest marked a crucial step in the quest for justice, but the journey was far from over. Veronica Hayes' trial for the murder of Jacob Rasmussen began in October 2016. The courtroom was packed with journalists, community members, and curious onlookers. The case had drawn national attention, partly due to the bizarre defense strategy Veronica's legal team employed. What became known as the astrology defense. Veronica claimed she was being discriminated against because she was a Virgo, a sign known for being meticulous and perfectionistic. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Martin Delgado, a seasoned 45-year-old with a reputation for being tough on crime, presented the evidence gathered by Detective Jenkins and Officer Blake. Delgado meticulously laid out the case against Veronica, showing the jury the phone records that placed her near Jacob's apartment at the time of the murder, the forensic evidence linking her to the scene, and the bruises on Jacob's body that indicated a violent struggle. Delgado painted a chilling picture of a woman consumed by jealousy and rage who had carefully planned and executed the murder. He called witnesses who testified about Veronica's possessive nature and her escalating anger toward Jacob's relationships with other women. Delgado's argument was clear: Veronica's obsessive jealousy had turned deadly. The defense, led by attorney Nancy Price, a 50-year-old known for her unconventional legal strategies, focused on the so-called astrology defense. Price argued that Veronica was being unfairly targeted because of her zodiac sign and that her actions were influenced by her astrological traits, rather than a criminal mindset. She brought in experts who testified about Virgo characteristics, emphasizing that Veronica's meticulousness and perfectionism were products of her sign, not indicators of premeditated murder. Veronica herself took the stand, carefully portraying herself as a victim of discrimination. She insisted that she had no intention of killing Jacob and that the incident was a tragic accident. Her testimony was bolstered by support from groups like Virgos United and Americans Against Birth Sign Discrimination, who protested outside the courthouse throughout the trial, demanding fair treatment for all astrological signs. Despite the prosecution's strong case, the jury was swayed by the defense's argument. On November 15, 2016, Veronica was found guilty of manslaughter instead of murder. The judge sentenced her to 10 years in prison, a decision that shocked many who had expected a harsher punishment. Jacob's family was devastated by the verdict. Friends and supporters of Jacob were equally outraged, feeling that the trial had turned into a spectacle rather than a pursuit of justice. Veronica's supporters, on the other hand, celebrated the verdict, viewing it as a victory against astrological discrimination. That trial and its outcome sparked widespread debate about the role of unconventional defenses in the legal system and the influence of public opinion on judicial decisions. The case became a media sensation, with pundits and legal experts weighing in on the implications of the verdict. After Veronica Hayes' trial ended, the lives of everyone involved were profoundly changed. Veronica began serving her 10-year sentence at the Florida Women's Reception Center, a medium-security prison in Ocala. Her case remained a topic of discussion in both astrological and legal circles, as she continued to claim that she was a victim of discrimination due to her zodiac sign. Using the prison's library, she wrote letters and articles about her experience, fueling ongoing debate about the role of astrology in the legal system. Jacob Rasmussen's family, still grieving the loss of their son, struggled to cope with the trial's outcome. They felt the 10-year sentence was far too lenient for such a brutal crime. The media frequently covered their reactions, highlighting their disappointment and grief. They continued to advocate for harsher penalties for crimes like Jacob's and worked to keep his memory alive through community events and online memorials. Marcus Dean, who had been a suspect in the case, faced ongoing scrutiny from the public. Although he was cleared of any involvement in Jacob's murder, his reputation was tarnished by his rivalry with Jacob and his history of altercations. Marcus struggled to find work and had to deal with the fallout from media coverage, which had painted him as a potential murderer. The stigma followed him long after the case was closed. Bryony Mitchell-Key, another suspect, returned to Australia, where she faced her own challenges. The negative publicity from the case had damaged her restaurant business, and she dealt with backlash from customers and critics alike. Bryony chose to live a quieter life, trying to distance herself from the controversy that had engulfed her in Naples. The murder of Jacob Rasmussen and the subsequent trial left a lasting impact on everyone involved. It brought attention to complex issues surrounding justice, unconventional defenses, and the influence of personal biases in the legal system. The case became a cautionary tale, illustrating how the quest for justice can be complicated by factors outside the facts of the crime itself. After Veronica Hayes was sentenced, the ripple effects of the case continued to shape the lives of those connected to it and the broader community. Veronica, now a convicted felon, became a polarizing figure. In prison, she used her time to write extensively about her experiences, focusing on what she claimed was the injustice of her conviction and the alleged discrimination against her based on her zodiac sign. Her writings were published online, gaining attention from both supporters and critics. Some saw her as a victim of a flawed legal system, while others viewed her as a manipulative murderer who used astrology as a smokescreen for her crimes. Meanwhile, Jacob Rasmussen's family channeled their grief into advocacy. They founded a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting victims of violent crimes and their families. Through this organization, they sought to raise awareness about the need for stricter sentencing laws and to provide resources for those navigating the aftermath of similar tragedies. They organized annual memorial events in Jacob's hometown in Minnesota, where friends and family gathered to honor his memory and reflect on his life. The events served as both a tribute to Jacob and a platform for advocating for justice reform. As for the Naples community, the case left a lasting impression. Many residents felt uneasy knowing that someone like Veronica Hayes, a well-respected and wealthy member of their community, could commit such a heinous act. The case also sparked discussions about the darker side of the sugar baby lifestyle, with local media and community groups debating the ethics and risks associated with such arrangements. Marcus Dean, who had been under suspicion during the investigation, struggled to move on from the ordeal. Despite being cleared of any wrongdoing, the stigma of being associated with a murder case lingered. He eventually left Naples, hoping to start fresh in a new city where he wasn't known as a former suspect in a high-profile case. However, the shadow of the past followed him, making it difficult to rebuild his life and career. Bryony Mitchell Key's life also took a different path after returning to Australia. The negative attention from the case had a lasting impact on her business ventures, and she decided to sell her restaurant chain and retire from the public eye. She remained reclusive, rarely giving interviews or appearing in public, trying to distance herself from the controversy that had marred her reputation. The Jacob Rasmussen case continued to be discussed in true crime circles, with podcasts, documentaries, and books exploring the details of the investigation and trial. But the bizarre elements of the case, including Veronica's astrology defense and the complex relationships Jacob had with his sugar mommies, made it a subject of fascination for years to come. It also raised questions about the influence of wealth, status, and unconventional defenses in the legal system, prompting debates that extended beyond the courtroom. In the end, the case of Jacob Rasmussen left an indelible mark on all who were involved and served as a grim reminder of how quickly lives can be derailed by jealousy, obsession, and violence. The story, though concluded in the legal sense, continued to echo in the lives of those who had been touched by it, a testament to the long-lasting impact of a single, tragic event.